Hello everyone, this is Captain BinoyVarakil, Assistant Professor, Department of English, St. Joseph's College, Devgiri, Kozhikode, Kerala. Welcome to my channel. This lecture series is for the postgraduate students of English language and literature. And in this lecture series, we discuss the Republic of Plato. So we have already completed 2 video lectures. In the first video lecture, we had a very detailed discussion on the biographical details of Plato, and in the second video, we just analyzed book 2 of the Republic, and this is the third video lecture, and in this lecture, we discuss book 3 of Plato. Let us just look at the most important ideas Plato discussed in book 3 of the Republic. In fact, the book 3 of the Republic deals with the myth of metals. We know that in book 1 and book 2 there was a discussion on, in book 1 we have discussions on the definition of justice, and we have come across 3 important definitions of justice in book 1, and book 2 we have very detailed discussions on the just city, so also the very challenges of Glaucon. Glaucon is challenging the definition of Socrates, and we have the most significant political metaphor, and of course the story of Gauges, and we also have the very concept of the guardians of the city-state, and we read about the very character and education of the guardians in book 2. And now we move on to book 3. Book 3 of the Republic continues the discussion of the character and education of the guardians that was begun in book 2. We are talking about the literary education of the guardians and the need for suitable literature. In book 2, we saw Plato insisting on the fact that there must be good stories that would inspire and inculcate good values in the children who are going to be guardians of the city in future. So book 3 is about the need for suitable literature to train the guardians. In book 2, Socrates tells us that the content of the current literature for young people is unsuitable. It is unsuitable theologically because it teaches people false ideas about the gods, and it is unsuitable morally because it makes people thoroughly ambitious. Therefore, the ideal city must have carefully designed the stories to tell the future guardians to avoid these theological and moral mistakes. Book 3 continues this discussion of the content of the stories about the gods, and then moves on to talk about the artistic elements in these stories, the style in which they will be told, and the harmonies too that will accompany these stories. This leads to a discussion on the musical education of the guardians. There is a long section that then follows about the physical education of the guardians, and that section we have in 403 verse 403, or sentence 403 to 412b of book 3, about of course the physical training, physical education of the guardians. So it deals now with the emotional and character training of the guardians through stories, and now their physical education to prepare them bodily to protect the city. In book 3, section 412c, then begins a new section on the question of who will rule the ideal state. This is very important. So exam point of view, students must expect a question like, who according to Plato will rule the ideal city, or what are the qualities or what are the qualifications required for the rulers of the ideal city, that we have in book 3, section 412c. Now we are told that we need a new class of people. These people will be drawn from the guardian class. We are told from the best among the guardian class, those who love the city most and seeks its advantage most consistently over their lifetimes, and the people who are the strongest and the most unshakable in their principles. So they must be the rulers of the ideal state or the city. Therefore, will be least likely to, these people, these rulers will be least likely to be turned away from doing what is right for the city, because they love the city, they are strongest and most unshakable, and they are very, very patriotic. So the military, this newly ruling class will be called the complete guardians. So Socrates calls them the complete guardians. The military class that they are drawn from will be called the auxiliary guards or auxiliaries. And now the ideal city will have 3 classes of people. Again, important for us, question for examination. What are the 3 classes of people the ideal city will have according to Plato's The Republic? And the 3 classes of people the ideal city will have are: number 1, the common people; number 2, the auxiliaries or soldiers; and number 3, the guardians or rulers. And book 3 ends with the myth of the metals. So this is again very important when we discuss the Republic of Plato, or when we study book 3 of Plato. One important topic or theme for discussion is myth of metals. Why does Plato introduce the myth of metals? Okay, so he speaks about the myth of metals to help his listeners understand who should be the guardians, or rather who are the 4 classes of people, okay, and who should be the guardians. So the myth of the metals is very, very important. Socrates says, we will tell the citizens of the ideal city a noble lie about their origin. So this is a lie. This is a lie about the origin of the life of the four classes, or rather the three classes of people of the ideal city. It's a lie because it will help them to understand that people in the ideal city are of different qualities, different merits. And what is this myth of the metals, or a noble lie about the origin of the three classes of people in the ideal city. We will tell them that they were all born out of the soil of the city. They were formed underground and then rose up out of the city, and that therefore they should think of the earth, the soil of their city, as their mother, and love and protect it always above all else, and that they should think of their fellow citizens as their brothers and sisters, as born out of the same soil. What Plato is doing in this part of the myth is to establish on the mythological foundation the idea that loyalty to place is central to the identity of all the citizens. They should love their city so much that they long to sacrifice anything for. They should think of it as their mother. So every citizen must be patriotic. Furthermore, Socrates says, we will tell the citizens that as they were being formed inside the earth, the gods mixed into their souls gold or silver or iron or bronze, making each individual suitable to be a ruler, an auxiliary, or a farmer. This is going to mean that each individual is suited to be a member of each class, not according to the accident of his birth, but according to his own inner nature. What Plato is essentially doing here is establishing the basis for meritocracy based upon individual talent and inborn orientation. This is very, very helpful to understand why there are three classes of people in the ideal city. So Plato wants to establish the fact that there is merit is considered, or rather this is the criteria to, of course, find the rulers or the guardians or for the ideal city. That is, of course, sheer merit, that is individual talent and inborn orientation. So Socrates says, we will tell the citizens of the ideal city that they must not assume that the child of two rulers will himself be a good ruler. Okay, so maybe your father is the king, or your father is a good ruler, or your mother and fathers are good rulers. Okay, it is not must that you should have the very merit and the inborn orientation. So it may be that he is born with a silver soul. So one may be born with a silver soul and would be best placed with the auxiliary class. Auxiliary class is the armies, the soldiers. We must above all avoid having any person with a bronze soul coming to power as one of the rulers, as a member of the guardian class. So it should be ensured that the ruler must be having the gold soul. Okay, so that is the right person to be the ruler of the city. So Plato is establishing here a kind of mythological basis for a meritocracy based upon people's own individual nature and individual talents. That brings us to the end of book 3. And now let us just consolidate whatever we discussed in the previous 3 video lectures. Lecture 1, we looked into the biographical details of Plato, and we also discussed book 1 in video lecture 1. We of course defined, or we came across 3 definitions of justice in book 1, and book 2 we that is the most significant chapter. So in book 2 we have the very metaphor of the political metaphor, the political metaphor. And book 2 again we have the challenge, Glaucon's challenge, and of course we have of course the idea that is of course of the guardians. Socrates tells us about the training their character education in book 2, and book 3 we study about the myth of the metals. Okay, that is of course the myth of the metals. And besides the myth of the metals, we also have a discussion of who will rule the ideal city. These are the important ideas in book 3. And now we move on to book 4. Book 4 we will discuss in the next video lecture, and we understand that book 4 is it is in fact a continuation of book 4, is a continuation of the 3 classes of people in the ideal city. And 3 classes of people in the ideal city and their mutual relations, and will then turn to the question of defining justice in the city and justice in the soul. Okay, so that we will see book 4. Book 4 to 10 we discuss in the next video lecture. We are not going for a very detailed discussion of book 4, but we will just look at the essential ideas in book 4 and book 5 and till all the books till the including the 10th book in next video lecture. Thanks a lot for listening. May God bless you all.